everyone. Hello and welcome in. It's been a few days since my last upload, our last opportunity to have a discussion about the state of the Minnesota Vikings as we move through this free agency period in the current off season, and that was by design. I was waiting for a big shoe to drop like a Dalvin Cook trade to happen before I jumped back on here and had a big time discussion about what the Vikings are doing and the team going forward. But that hasn't happened yet. We're still waiting on to figure out what this team wants to do with Dalvin Cook. We're still waiting to see what the decision is with Darius Smith. The new league calendar has started, so it's getting more realistic as time goes by, as the days go on, that those two players might be sticking around, but it remains to be seen. And we will discuss both of those players a little bit as we go through today's video, where we talk about some of the players, familiar faces, that are sticking around with the Minnesota Vikings. Harrison Smith agreed to a restructure. He will be back. Alexander Mattison signed a 2-year contract for very good money, I might add, in favor of the Minnesota Vikings. He will be sticking around, which kind of puts the Dalvin Cook situation in a flux. I'm not really quite sure what this team plans on doing with its backfield at the moment. And then about an hour ago, we got news that Oli Udoh will be re-signing with the Minnesota Vikings. So he will come back, I would imagine, as positional depth on the offensive line, which is totally fine. I know we've had our discussions about Oli Udoh in the past, but given the fact that you can bring back a player who knows the system, who is, has a rapport with his teammates, has experience, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I just really hope that he's not going to start more than 1 or 2 games this year, because that would be bad. So that's my only request, is to keep him out of the starting lineup as much as possible. And I think that all the fans can agree with that. But he's a good depth piece. I'll take it. So I think the majority of this video is we're going to talk about Harrison Smith. We're going to talk about Alexander Mattison and how the Alexander Mattison situation relates to Dalvin Cook and what all this means going forward. So first, we're going to start with Harrison Smith. Him staying with the Minnesota Vikings this year, I think, is a good thing. It gives you the veteran presence, the future Hall of Fame presence for a Brian Flores defense to really turn the notch up to 11. It also gives you the veteran leadership in the locker room that I think this team still needs after the departures of Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, so on and so forth. So that is good that we're keeping all of that intact. I also like it because he can be a mentor for, Lewisine, who I hope is ready to come back sooner than later from his injury last year. I'm not sure what the plan is with Cameron Bynum, but still another person that Harrison Smith can mentor. It also gives me a good feeling about the secondary, having somebody with the experience, the talent that he has, being back there with what is going to look like a bunch of inexperienced guys, right? Because as of right now, Byron Murphy is the only other person that I would say qualifies as being described as having significant experience in the secondary. I mean, we can talk about, Cameron Bynum and the experience that he's gained in his short tenure with the Minnesota Vikings, but it's just not the same. And then you have Andrew Booth, who is an unknown, a Caleb Evans, not sure about him. And then we don't know where else we're going to go with this secondary. So Harrison Smith coming back on a deal that makes sense, I think, is a home run. This is a great move by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Good choice by the Vikings. I think that most people are aware that if you followed me here long enough, that I like to exist, or at least attempt to exist, in a world of reality where when it is abundantly clear that it is time to move on from a player, that you have to disconnect yourself as a fan and think about the betterment of the team going forward in the future. Because a couple of years ago, when the Vikings were starting absolutely terrible in the 2020 season with that 1-5 start, I was making videos left and right about, let's trade Adam Thielen, let's trade Harrison Smith, we have to move on, we have to rebuild. Harrison Smith, his jersey is hanging up in my closet. It is, he's one of my favorite players on this team, and he will probably go down in history as one of my favorite players of all time, even up there with Randy Moss, Justin Jefferson, et cetera, et cetera. It would have been hard for me to say goodbye, and I'm glad that we don't have to do it. But when the time comes, I will be ready, because I was ready 3 years ago. So Harrison Smith coming back, I think overall is a good thing. I am kind of surprised that Harrison Smith, outlasted Adam Thielen on this roster. That's just wild to me. Just Adam Thielen just broke down faster, and his services were no longer needed longer than Harrison Smith. So I don't know. That's just kind of a weird thing that I never thought that I would see Harrison Smith last longer on this roster than Adam Thielen, but it is what it is. Moving on to Alexander Mattison, 2-year contract. I think that this is what a starting running back should be paid in this era of football, this era of the NFL, where things have changed offensively. I will say that I am always rooting for the player to secure as much of a bag as they possibly can when their time comes to negotiate, and because they're the reason that the league exists. I also do tend to favor, at the same time, playing both sides of the fence here, the team makes smart decisions with its salary cap. So this is a situation where I'm on that side of the fence, that we've made a smart decision with the running back who could potentially be the starter for the regular season. Now, you guys in the comments are going to have to let me know how you feel about that perspective. Alexander Mattison being a 17-game starter for the Minnesota Vikings. I think at that salary hit, that's pretty good. It also kind of baffles me that the Vikings were able to secure him for what they did. I understand that the running back market isn't what it used to be, and it's actually kind of god-awful if you look at some of the other running back contracts around the league. But it surprises me that other teams have made choices that they have when Alexander Mattison could have been a potential possibility. I think if I were the Philadelphia Eagles and my choice was Rashad Penny or Alexander Mattison, maybe this is some bias speaking, but I probably would have chosen Alexander Mattison, even though Rashad Penny is the bigger risk-reward candidate. If I was the Miami Dolphins, I'd probably be calling, be like, Alexander Mattison, you want to come play in Miami? Same thing with the Buffalo Bills. Same thing with the Carolina Panthers. Same thing with even, the Lions or the Bears, because it seems like the Lions are ready to do something different with DeAndre Swift. They let Jamal Williams go. They bring in David Montgomery. I don't know. I don't know if David Montgomery is a good fit. I think Alexander Mattison, being the younger player with less wear and tear on the tires, might have been a better choice. I don't know. That's just one man's opinion. But the Alexander Mattison situation ultimately places the biggest elephant in the room that you could possibly think of as it relates to Dalvin Cook, because before the Mattison re-signing, we were already talking about, is this team moving on from Dalvin Cook? Is he past his prime? The second half of last season didn't have a 100-yard game after they played the Buffalo Bills. It just doesn't look like the player that he used to. And I think a lot of that has to do with both time, Father Time being undefeated, and the fact that during the Mike Zimmer era, they absolutely ran Dalvin Cook into the ground with as many carries and opportunities as possible, because he was supposed to be the focal point of the defense. Smarter people than me have already kind of talked about this, but the Minnesota Vikings can't seem to let go of the old style of football. And I know I've harped on that point a lot with, the previous regime being stuck in 1992 and just wanting to run the offense through the running back. And it just seems like the organization as a whole just can't get themselves away from that, because I think Adrian Peterson, being who he was talent-wise, they're just like, well, that worked. Why can't we keep doing it with Dalvin Cook? And then I think we're finally getting to a point where they're realizing that it's not the way things work anymore. And that's kind of why I'm glad that, Kevin O'Connell is here to try something different, and Mike Zimmer is not, because we all know what would be happening if he were in charge of this team and putting God knows who as the offensive coordinator. So does this mean that the days are numbered for Dalvin Cook? I don't know. I think it has to. I really think it has to, because you've got to convince Alexander Mattison that he's going to get a bigger role, which would mean a bigger opportunity for him in his next free agency period of negotiations to secure a bigger contract. So he needs the opportunity to be able to do that. I don't think they're going to pay him to be the backup unless they're just going to have a running back by committee, which, how do you convince Dalvin Cook to do that? I think if you put these two guys in a room and you have this conversation where, like, we're going to do RB by committee, nobody is the true number one, I think Dalvin Cook demands a trade on the spot. I really do. So I don't see how this relationship can last. I don't think that we'll hear anything about it, because I think so far in the early goings of the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah era, that things have been kept close to the vest. So we won't really hear any leaks or reports or rumors about that, other than the fact that they might be shopping him, which I think they currently are. And if Dalvin Cook does go, I don't think it's going to be a problem, because you have Ty Chandler also as well on this roster. And I think Mattison and Chandler, and then you could draft another running back or pick somebody up on the cheap, gives you a significantly good enough running back room to be able to compete in this league. Dalvin Cook, I don't know what you could get for him in return in as far as like compensation goes for trading him. Maybe a third round pick if you can swindle somebody out of it. I think fourth or fifth is probably the best. And this is just my opinion. You probably disagree with that, but I don't think that running backs are seen as the hot commodity as they used to. The league is just different. And nobody's trading Christian McCaffrey this season or Saquon Barkley this season, those are few and far between. So Dalvin Cook, I think we'll find out probably in the next week. We'll definitely know before the draft. And then to close on one more note, Zadarius Smith, as of this recording, is still on this team as well. The Marcus Davenport thing was kind of weird there for a second. Introductory press conference, deal not finalized. Then the next day they get all the signatures. I don't know what that's all about. But as of this recording, Zadarius Smith is still on this roster. I kind of don't know why either. It baffles me. But I'm not in the building. I'm not in the rooms having these conversations. So I just from an outsider's perspective, looking at the numbers, the roster, the depth chart, the cap numbers, the opportunities presenting themselves in free agency in the upcoming draft, I'm not sure why they need Zadarius Smith. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. And then one final piece of information, or just speculation. I guess speculation is a better word than information. I don't think Danielle Hunter's getting traded. If I'm wrong, obviously freezing cold take alert. But I don't think Danielle Hunter's getting traded, because if it was going to happen, I think it would have happened already, because you need to secure the draft capital return that you're looking for sooner than later, because you don't know what another team in the league is going to offer other teams to maybe get the picks that you want in a specific range. So like if you wanted a first round pick, you should probably do it now, which is why I think the Bears were quick to move on this, because why the Panthers were quick to move on this, because they're like, if we sit here with our thumbs up our ass, somebody's going to get this deal done before us, and then we're not going to be in the position that we desire. So I don't know, lots to think about, lots to discuss, but overall, final thoughts, Harrison Smith is back. I think this is a good thing. Alexander Mack, I think him coming back on this deal is good. Oli Udoh, no problem with that, just depth. It is what it is. You're going to have players like that be retained. And then Dalvin Cook and Zadarius Smith, I don't know. Those pages will be turned sooner than we know. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.